What about eggplant and that? That seems to cause a lot of problems in my
So eggplant is high histamine. So that what are high histamine foods? So what has happened to histamine? And let me just back up for a moment. Another thing with the darn spike protein, it turns on the histamine receptor gene, HRH1. It's in the clinical literature. Oh boy. So now we have all these people with idiopathic anxiety disorder, and it's a freaking histamine response. Or we have somebody turning type 1 diabetic after having a hemoglobin A1C of 5.2 and they're diabetic. Oh my gosh, it was histamine. I have a client who was diabetic for 20 years. He's in the wellness space, and we have stopped him from having to use insulin because we are using antihistamines.
sure.
And I had the privilege again of speaking with Dr. Lipton yesterday, and we were talking about histamine. He's like, "You're right, Terry. Histamine's tied to diabetes. Histamine's tied to heart attacks. People don't know about this." And so we were talking about we were like rawing each other, saying, "Yeah, very few people in the space understand this, and especially in the space of the pandemic." And
Um,
so healthy foods like avocado, banana, eggplant, anything fermented or sprouted, yogurt, right? So if you're trying to be, I'm trying to get probiotics or high histamine. And so if you're trying to be, okay, I'm going to be that biohacker and I'm going to sprout my grains and I'm going to do sourdough and I'm going to eat pickles and I'm going to eat kombucha and kimchi and oh my God, you could be literally creating hell in your body and creating anxiety, creating a heart attack, diabetes, idiopathic anxiety disorder, ulcerative colitis, mental health issues. The histamine goes on and on. Heart disease. You could have, I've had somebody with a high histamine load post COVID, heart rate, professional ballerina, heart rate went to 200. Her
wow.
resting heart rate usually was in her 50s.
Mm.
Idiopathic anxiety out of nowhere, panic attacks.
Oh, wow. So, looking at your quick tests online, that'll pick up, if you're a histamine sort of responder, and then genetically, what do you see genetically in terms of histamine?
So the genetically is the HRH1, HRH2, HRH3, 4, 5, 6. We also look at the CYP4 family of genes, the CYP2D6 gene, the CYP1A2, the CYP34A, I believe. So the CYP family of genes intersects with histamine. And if you have a lot of sulfation pathway genes, because that's why I look at genes so comprehensively. The CBS gene, the SUOX gene, the BH4 gene, the
Okay.
SALT genes.
Oh, that's profound. Okay, so we've looked now at amyloids, sulfur, and histamine to that degree, and then next, where would you go, Terry?
I say oxalates. Lectins, I call them like number 7 on my list. And that's more of if you manage the big stuff, the little stuff doesn't matter because it goes away.
Okay.
So why are oxalates so profound? Once again, the elucidative work of Dr. Stephanie Seneff. Hi, Stephanie. um, she had elucidated that glyphosate had a disruptive effect on our oxalobacter bacteria in our gut. Why is that so important? Because all these massive foods that are so good for us, berries, spinach, almonds, black beans, they have protective coating of oxalates to keep them from predators. But we used to have the gut microbiome to say, okay, we're going to dismantle you and we're going to extract all the amazing other phytonutrients from these great foods. Well, guess what? That's not there anymore. And another little dirty secret, the spike protein makes oxalates with the
Hmm.
calcium channels. So now we're having a higher oxalate burden. And guess what? Oxalates help aspergillus, which is mold. So mold and oxalates play together. So now if you have candida, you're going to have, you see a lot of pandas or OCD. If you look at an organic acid test, their arabinose will be elevated and so will their oxalic acid. They run in parallel. And so that's a big deal. Why? Because it's tied directly to heart disease. It's tied directly to building amyloids again, because guess what? Amyloids and oxalate, they feed one another.
Hmm.
And so arteriosclerosis, stroke, pulmonary embolisms, cysts, not
Sure.
direct corollary to cancer, but you build stuff, kidney stones. We're having women having these massive cysts in their breast, in their reproductive organs. I recently had a 23-year-old who had a full hysterectomy. She built cysts the size of her head. hysterectomy at 23. That is never in my lifetime. I'd never heard of that. And so we're seeing more and more disruption, especially in the reproductive areas. Prostate cancer. We're seeing a lot of this. It's not just it's happening like this, it's this curve.